What's up? This your boy Elijah. Welcome back to Glenn's is How I See It, another edition of Humble Dad. We got a special guest today. Reached out to him, and he was like, "Of course I'll do this. This is good. All right, I have no problem with it." He is a nutritionalist. I think I said that right. You know, my list sometimes get in the way. Married with kids, director of a class at our church. Enjoys helping people. And matter of fact, he introduced me to the Chamber of Commerce here in our local community, which has been a blessing, even though I've only been twice. So I want to welcome none other than Mr. Richard Garner. How's
Hey,
it going?
hey, I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing well. You know what I'm saying? It's life, bro. So you got to make the most of what is given to you. You know? So I'm good. I really appreciate you being on. Absolutely.
Yeah, we
So I want to go
tried to get
ahead.
to I was thinking we tried to get together yesterday, and you were out doing soccer, and it reminded me of doing soccer with my boys.
It was softball and baseball.
Softball and baseball. Okay, I don't know. I got soccer. That's because what I do with my kids. So that's just what I was thinking.
It's still a
But yeah,
sport, so it don't matter.
kids come first, and especially when it comes to scheduling, your schedule is not your own. It's like I try to squeeze things stuff in between where my kids are already got things going on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being understanding. Matter of fact, what's crazy, this season, yesterday was only the first game.
Hmm.
However, it's been really crazy with them scheduling things. Like the girls, they re they had made a schedule, then they went back and redid the schedule, and then they came back the night before, and because the field was still wet, they did the schedule again. And I said to myself, okay, all right, well, okay, then I'm just gonna have to miss the second game. And then when the day started, and and I had just totally forgot. At one point, I thought I lost my keys. I was trying to get back, and I literally lost track of this meeting. I was like, man, this is crazy. All right, but yeah, I appreciate your understanding. So let's get
Yeah.
it going. Let's get it going. First question: how do you feel, or do you feel like there's a difference between being a dad and a father? And if so, uh, what's your thoughts?
A dad and a father. Yeah, I think we all have our own perspectives on how we were fathered or are raised. I mean, at least most of us who only have one perspective. I had a single father the whole time. And my parents. It's interesting. My parents both were married 4 times. Once before to each other when they were very young, and that ended quick, and then to each other for like 30 years, 20 some years, and that's my experience. And then when I was as a teenager, they divorced and got married again for a short period, and then again for a longer time. So craziness. But in my mind, I only think of myself as having a single father. And when I refer to him, I always refer to him as my father, just because of the authority of that name. When you think of a father, you think of the role, the task, the responsibility that comes with. But when I think of a dad, I think of that's what I called my dad. I referred to him as dad. I never said father. I never, and it's not that I wasn't thought of him as I wanted to respect him. I just um, it was a title, I guess. The title that I gave the man. I never called him by his name. That's for sure. Never called him daddy either. But it was this is my dad. Hey dad, can you do this? Love you, dad. That kind of stuff. But when I talked about him, I talked about my father because of who he was, and that I think that was more of a respectful thing. Um, so when I think of those two different words, I think of them what they connotate. The dad was the relationship I had with him. The father was who he was in my life. He was my father. He was the person who provided for us, did things for us, and took care of us. So that kind of has more of an official sounding title. Um, it kind of is weird. I don't know whether my kids have ever called me father either. Yeah, that just seems kind of like I don't know, a little formal for some reason.
Yeah,
But
even
yeah.
though we do, yeah, and so I asked that question because everybody has a different thought process on it, right? And
Mm.
just to kind of gauge how you may have grown up, or how you may see your dad or your father. So kind of talk. You say you see him as a single dad, single father. So kind of take me through like what when you say single, you mean that mom was not
No,
in the
what I
picture, or
what I meant was he's my only point of reference.
Okay.
He was the only dad I ever knew. I had other stepfathers in my life, in my world, but not really anybody who fathered me. So yeah, he wasn't a single dad. Although there was a time there when it was just me, he and I. When my parents divorced, my mom came to Texas. I was living in California. That it was just the two of us. But the strange thing about it is I'm the sixth of seven kids and the youngest boy. And so by the time I came around, a lot of my dad's parenting was really done. We existed in the same place. We both shared the same house and stuff, but there wasn't much between us at that point. So he, in fact, really, to be honest, I think my middle sister, I've got three older sisters, but the one who was like right and dead in the middle, there's three of seven of us. That one right in the middle, she seemed to be like the parent of my age. The four youngest of us were kind of raised by this little matriarch in the middle of our family.
How much older than you?
There's a 10-year difference between the oldest and the youngest. Okay. And so the older three, I always kind of felt more like aunts and uncles to me. They were old enough. They were, by the time I was kind of getting into school and stuff, they were finishing up school or had jobs or gone all the time and didn't really have a relationship at home. But again, that's my perspective. We sit around, we talk as a family. They remember a lot of my childhood more than I do, just because they were old enough and they knew what was going on. A lot of my stories are stories I've overheard again. Oh, remember we did this? I heard it so much now. I claim it as my story, but it's not mine. But,
wow.
But it's funny that you decided to do this at this time, because one of the things that my family started doing is with COVID and lockdown and all that kind of stuff, we're doing a Zoom meeting every other week just to get together, because we're kind of spread out. Got a brother in Florida, a sister down in Houston, and a couple still out in California, Arizona. So we don't get together very much, especially since my father passed away a year or so ago. That was kind of our get together, was our Thanksgiving at his house. But we've been doing the Zoom call to meet each other. And so this last one we did, it was my oldest brother went to South Carolina, where my dad grew up, and was to visit his sister, our oldest living relative right now. She's 92, or she's going to be 92. And so we usually try to have this little theme. Okay, what are we going to talk about to get together? So we're not just kind of staring at each other. And that's the way my sister organizes things. So she said, okay, we're all going to share a story about dad. What did your dad teach you? So we did that yesterday, as a matter of fact. Got together and got to hear everybody's different perspective. For those 10 years of difference of being raised, what was something that was significant to you? And I think we all related a little bit to everything. But it was interesting just to see how different your dad is to the firstborn child, and the second and the third. And then when it gets down to fifth, sixth, and seventh, it's definitely a different relationship. Same house, same adult, same parent, but it's such a different relationship when you're a firstborn child or only child compared to being a sixth, seventh, or more.
So how did you? What was your take on what you learned from your dad?
Well, the one story that I remembered, and again, this goes back to the time that it was just us. When I was really young, again, I don't remember a whole lot of interaction with my dad, because it was that sister of mine who kind of raised us. We got home from school. She was the one who said, here's your chores. Here, before you can go out and watch Ozzy and Harriet or whatever was on TV, you got to do these things. And my folks were working, so I didn't interact with them too much. But after everybody had left, I started becoming dating age, and girls just make you crazy. And so for whatever reason, I don't remember what happened, but I came home and I punched my fist through a wall. I got frustrated, and bam! And of course, as soon as you do that, I think, oh, I'm dead. My dad's gonna kill me. And so I'm just fretting about it. And he comes home and sees that and looks at me, and normally in fact, one of my sister-in-laws had said, one of the things about my dad that she learned, she was been in-law longer than anybody else. She's my oldest brother's wife. She says, I learned not to make your dad mad, because his eyes can spit fire. He never cussed, never talked ugly, really didn't even have to raise his voice a whole lot. Big man. So, but he was the authority in our world. When he says something, that was it. So we grew up in pretty much a black and white, this is the way it is, right or wrong, And so I just knew I'm done for. But he said, yeah, I haven't seen that since when I did that when I was your age, So he had a relationship. He's like, I remember what it was like to be your age, and it was like, okay, now you got to fix it. That was all it was. It wasn't going to be one of those things where I'm in trouble, I'm restricted, and we're going to have a fight about it. It was like, yeah, I did that too. And I really hadn't had that with him a whole lot. A lot of us, we were doing the same thing along the way. My dad was in the Navy for most of my parents' marriage, which probably led to their getting divorced. But and then he was an auditor working for the city of California. So very analytical, very technical, very strict, very structured kind of person. And so for us to relate to anything on a an emotional level or on a relationship kind of level, there wasn't a whole lot of that. But that's the first time I really felt like, okay, we're come from the same place. Maybe we are a lot more alike than I thought I was. And
so you felt like he got you.
Yeah, and there was some grace there. In the midst of the law, this is the way of it is with my dad. It's one way or the other. There's also some grace saying, yeah, we do that. Sometimes in our world, we get frustrated and we do stupid things, and then we fix them and we move on. Wow. So I enjoyed that. That made me feel like there was kind of hope, because I think a lot of my family went into the military too. They just like, I wanted to get out. I need to get away, because our house was so structured. Not a negative vibe, but there wasn't a whole lot of freedom to do what you want to do, at least that I saw.
So they went to the military?
He was. I did. I didn't. No, I have, of the 7 of us, 4 of them went into the military. My dad was
get out of the strict. That's going to seem like going into the strictness of authority there.
Yeah, I think it was just an easy out. Only 2 of them stuck with it. Two went in and out pretty quickly into the Army, and then 2 into the Air Force, stayed a little bit longer. 1 went the full 20 years, there's retirement. 1, she went through the reserve and got her retirement, and then the other 2 were just in and out, got a vocation and left. But it was just an easy way to get out of the house. For me, it was I ended up moving to Texas. I came here when my parents divorced. I came to visit my mom on a Saturday.
What age was that?
I was 17.
Okay.
So I'd been living with my dad for about 2 years. I think I was 15 when they divorced. So it was me and my dad for about 2 years, and there were some interesting times there, but definitely a good relationship. I think it was a positive relationship. Maybe not as close as I like to have with my kids, but I think it was good for from what I know from where my father came from.
Okay.
And then moved to or came to visit my mom, and she was married, and her husband was very different. Not as big and tall. Again, in my image of a father, of a dad, was the big person. He was always everybody you looked up to, and when he into the room, everything stopped because he was the focus of attention. Okay. My wife's new dad was not that way. He was kind of easygoing Texas guy.
Your mom? What did you say? Your mom's new husband?
Husband, yes. I may have called him a dad. Yeah, it was. She got remarried, which is the reason why she ended up in Houston. She got remarried, moved to Houston, took my little sister with her for a while. Okay. So I came to visit her on a Saturday, went to church on Sunday, met this girl who ended up being my wife, and said, yeah, I like Texas. I'll stay here. So, again,
you met your wife at 17?
At 17. We got married at 19. I was 19.
Wow.
Yeah. In Texas, which I never expected to. You grow up thinking, what's your life going to be like? And never once did I think, I'm going to be in Texas, going to marry a girl in Texas, going to live most of my adult life in Texas.
Wow. So then you okay, so y'all get married, and then when does the first kid come along?
We were married 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the advantages of getting married young intentionally. I know a lot of people get married young, because they have kids and they got to, but we dated for 2 years, and then so we weren't in any rush to have kids. We feel like we had plenty of time just to kind of be us. I was 25 when our first daughter was born.
Oh, okay, that's what's up. And so then, take me back to the time. Do you remember when your daughter was born?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so do you remember when your wife told you that y'all was pregnant?
Wow.
I know that may be a little longer ago.
Yeah, that's well, and less. Well, I wouldn't say less significant. It was an important thing, but we were trying too. A lot of. I know people who I just looked at my wife wrong and she got pregnant. It's like a surprise. All 3 of our kids, we have 3 kids, and all 3 of them were intentional at the time. And well, now I did kind of have to talk my wife into having one more. She was okay with two. She thought, hey, got a boy, got a girl, we're done. And coming from a big family, I thought I just felt like we needed more kids. So, but yeah, when it was like, okay, we're pregnant, like good success, we did that. It was something we were planning on. Yeah,
it
yeah.
worked. Okay,
right.
Okay, so then take me to like coming to the day when she says my water broke. Here's the day, and then you see your daughter for the first time. Walk me through that day.
Yeah, we didn't get to plan. Well, we planned it. We didn't get to have that race to the hospital, water broke, excitement stuff. All three of our kids, they told us, you'll never go to full term, and then we were 2 weeks late on all of them. So it was like, okay, now we're scheduling an appointment. So we woke up and like, hey, we're going to hospital day. Let's go. It was very different than what a lot of people expect and what you hear from other people. The craziness. Ours was again very very structured, very controlled. We went in. The first time we actually hadn't even settled on a name at that point. We weren't we weren't sure if it was going to be a boy or girl. We didn't know. I don't think so. I want to say we didn't know at first because we had some possibilities. If it was a boy, were we going to name him after me? I don't know. Maybe not. If it was a girl, we'd gone through the books and had all the names. But we did all the stuff, that people do. We did the Lamaze classes, and we, did a lot of things to kind of get prepared for it. Again, that was in '86. Our daughter was born in '86, so it's been a while ago, and they don't have a lot of things we have now as far as recording devices and being able to. I think I had a cassette recorder I stuck in the corner just so we can hear the baby crying and all that process. That's all we got out of it.
Okay.
But I do remember specifically when she was born and they gave her to me. I swear it looked like I was looking at a mirror that made me younger. I felt like she looked just like me as a baby.
Benjamin Buttons. Okay.
It was a girl, but it was me. So we called her Rachel instead of Richard. She's Rachel Michelle and I'm Richard Michael. So she was named for me, even though she was a girl, and that wasn't planned except for when I saw her, I thought, okay, this is me. So she's a mini me, and we'll call her Rachel instead.
So then so after the first one, then when does the second one come along?
They're all about 3.5 years apart. So we did, April of '86, then we went around to October of '89 for Brent, our middle son, and then another 3.5 years back to April again for our youngest, Stephen.
Really? Okay. So then take me through. Okay. So you have a girl. Then did you know that you was going to be having a boy on the second go round?
We did all the pictures and the sonograms. I think that we did. Our first time, I remember we painted the room kind of a rainbow colored because I want to say we didn't really know the first time what it was going to be, but I do believe that the second and third we figured that out, and Terry will tell you better on that stuff. I always have a good memory for that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so but I'm pretty.
Okay, so you say you're pretty sure?
Yeah, I think we knew we were going to have the boys the second and third time.
Okay, so then when you how did y'all decide on the name?
Some of it, again, we went back to the book. We'd gone through all that stuff and thinking of names. Brent was more, and really Stephen both were names that we just liked. We liked the sound of Brent. We don't have any other Brents in our family. We had some friends that were Brents before. We enjoyed it. And then his middle name was Daniel. Again, doesn't belong to anybody in our family. It just kind of, we're kind of wanting to come up with something that we thought we'd like, that would go together well. You play with the initials. You don't want to name a child that anything they can make fun with. They're gonna mix his initials up, or they're gonna switch it around. And we had heard one time that Dr. Dobson, he was kind of our go-to guy when we were growing up. Yeah. And we didn't have all the internet available, so right now everybody's bombarded with opinions. But back then he had he was kind of the authority on raising Christian kids. So we listened to him, and he said the same thing. He says, I was really careful about picking a name for his daughter. Danae was his oldest daughter, and that was was very crafted so it wouldn't be picked on. And sure enough, when she was young, he heard her friends calling her Danae something. They made something up. It doesn't really matter. Kids are going to find a way of teasing you. So I think that's why we came up with something so different, because we were trying to be careful that it wasn't going to be something. And I don't know how successful we were or not, but we like it. Yeah. Whereas Stephen, at least his middle name is Neil. He is named. His middle name was named after Terry's dad. Her dad is Herbert Neil, so we used that name for him. But
Okay.
of course, again, being the third son, my dad's name was David. My oldest brother's name was David, and his son was David. It's not like we were going to carry on my dad's names, so we had to come up with something to kind of be creative on our side.
That's cool. I know there's a real estate guru. His name is Brent Daniels. So I don't know if you ever heard of him, but
I haven't.
that name sounds, it's crazy that that's like I know the name Brent Daniels, but it's not your son.
Yeah.
So they're about 3.5 years apart. So when did so parenting comes along? So the first couple of years, the first 3 years, talk to me about your parenting style as a father during that time period.
Well, one of the nice things about moving out to Texas and getting to know my wife was that she had a really godly family, and I even though I think my dad taught me a lot of things about respect, treating people right, being honest, having integrity, patriotism, a lot of real strong foundational things for as far as being a dad. Terry's dad, my father-in-law, he taught me things about faith and passion, compassion, all the Christian aspects of that, and the relationship he had with his family was different. They were smaller. My wife has a one brother and one sister, so they were a much tighter family, and they did call him daddy, even as an adult. He was kissing his kids on the lips as adults, and I did. He just had a definitely a more intimate relationship with his kids. So I did have that two different references, and growing up, since I was here in Texas, he was more of an influence when it came to that. My dad made me the man who I was, but my father-in-law was more of the example of how to be a father for me.
Wow.
I think, because again, most of my early memories of my dad it wasn't just me, it was me and my brother, and it wasn't just my dad, it was my dad and my mom and my sister, and there was a whole lot of parenting going on there besides just my dad. Even though he was the ultimate authority, my parenting skills weren't necessarily from him.
So in that first 3 years, like what are as you're learning, what was I know for me, the first year I was struggling. I know we were struggling as it relates to being like trying to figure out how many diapers we need to take, how much milk needs to go, how much formula we got to get. Should we sleep should the baby sleep with us? Should it sleep like where? All of these dynamics, right? Because they don't really prepare you much. Right. So like, what was how would you describe your first year of parenting?
Well, go back to my personal faith. I grew up an American, which made me feel like I was a Christian, but I didn't know until I got to Texas and started going to church with my family that I actually needed to have a relationship with God. And when I was 17, that's when I got saved, because I decided I don't know how to be an adult. I need to know somebody who does. And I've just been introduced to Christ. Even though I'd heard the name, I didn't know that I have the Holy Spirit who can guide and direct me along the way. And I think that was instrumental too at that time, because it wasn't for, later that I was going to have kids. I think that the Holy Spirit was going to guide and direct me too. So a lot of my parenting was either from what I'm reading and my other friends. We've been a part of Cross City Church, almost this whole time. We moved up from Houston to the mid cities in '83. So by the time our kids were born, we were already members of the church for 3 years. And so we had a kind of a group of guys too, that we were like sharing all that stuff you're talking about. Nobody knows, you don't know that. And even if someone tried to tell you, you don't really care, because it doesn't apply to you. When people tell you how to be a parent, but you're not a parent, you're like, that's in one ear and out the other. I don't need to know that.
That's funny that you say that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had something to add to that, what you just said. I have a accountability partner that's my best friend that's in Atlanta, and I was telling him, I said, man, I'm doing these Humble Dad podcasts, man. You should check it out. You know what I'm saying? Because we boys. I mean, we've been boys for like almost 12 to 15 years now, something like that. And we always involved in each other, knowing what's going on with each other. He said, dude, I ain't no dad.
Yeah.
I said, but you want to be one. He said, but I ain't one yet. So like when it's time, I was like, okay. Okay, if you
Yeah.
say so. So yeah, that is true. People don't want
Yeah.
to know until they feel like they need to know.
Right. Even being pregnant makes me okay. Now it's happening. It's imminent. I got to do this. But up
Yeah,
to before that, yeah, you always think there's going to be time. I got enough else to worry about right now. Right.
yeah,
But
that's true.
we did experience like everybody else. You know, figure it out on your own. You know, find out what works, and there's a lot of that paranoia that first time. I'm going to break this baby. Something's going to happen, and I'm gonna ruin them for life. You know, tell them say the wrong word, feed them the wrong food, not be there when they step off the curb or something. I
Yeah,
mean, it's amazing our kids survive when you think of all the different things that can go wrong with them, and
absolutely.
yet I did believe that the Holy Spirit was guiding me along the way. We prayed constantly. We learned to pray together from the very beginning of our marriage, and so we pray about everything. And I just had to believe that um, God was not going to let me mess up His plan. He
Mhm.
has a plan here, and my desire was to follow it. So He's going to keep me from doing stuff wrong. And so even if things seemed wrong and were hard, I thought, okay, there's a lesson to be learned here. I was able to kind of see that the mistakes that I was making with my kids, or the dumb stuff that my kids were doing, it was all part of a plan to, one,
Mhm.
help me to be the good father I need to be, and two, help them to learn to be what they need to be. Because when you first see someone like I did with Rachel, I thought, this is a mini me, and you know what? She's going to be perfect because I am going to help her to learn all the things I did wrong. She won't have to mess with that. All she'll have to mess with is the good stuff. And I believed it at the time. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
and then, what, maybe a month, and you realize, hey, this kid's got a personality of its own. She's going to make all her own mistakes, regardless of what I
yeah,
tell her. And so,
yeah,
yeah, we learned along the way that, yeah, our best ideas of how things are going to work aren't necessarily going to be what God wants for them to do, because He wanted her to
absolutely,
learn the hard way, because then it would be her
absolutely.
own.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking about that. I think a couple of days ago, how it is that we want our kids to grow up and be perfect for whatever reason, right? We want, however, God has that plan for them, and in them, but however, the goal for us is to be obedient to Him in how we're supposed to parent them, right? Because there's no guarantee that they're going to accept Christ. There's no guarantee that they're going to make the godly decisions. There's no guarantee of any of those things, right?
Right.
It's just that we're called to raise them in, uh, especially if you're a believer in Christ, right? We're called to raise them in a godlike manner or a Christ-like manner. And so, because I was thinking about how me and my wife, we come from two different backgrounds. Obviously, most people do. I was raised in the church and she wasn't, right? So, what are the odds of us two coming together with us having two different views,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then trying and wanting to build a godlike marriage, So God can do whatever He wants to with whoever, no matter the situation. The goal is for us to be obedient,
Yeah.
right? So yeah,
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to what you're saying about how long we were waited before we had kids. I think God gave us an opportunity to kind of settle some of that stuff, help us get us on the same page.
mm,
Terry definitely was raised in the church. She was saved when she was young. I was raised church adjacent.
that was
We went
me.
we went to church on Christmas and Easter, and went to for all the holidays or any special events. And we all had Bibles because our grandparents were all strong
Mm,
believers, but it never really impacted our life a whole lot. I was actually raised in the Episcopal church,
okay.
but I didn't like go through catechism or anything, and that was part of that church. You're supposed to have done that. You learn all these things, learn about the church, go through the catechisms, and you go through a ceremony and stuff. I didn't even do that. So even though that we were part of that church, we really didn't let it become a part of our life. It was just a piece
Mm,
of what was going on. So hearing about Christ was like hearing about Santa Claus or hearing about any kind of,
oh, okay.
there's this, kind of niceness that goes on in the world. And we're just hoping that we can kind of fit within it before I
Okay.
realized, oh no, this is you and God, personal, one-on-one. That's the way He wants it to be. And so that was kind of a really definitely a mind-opening change in my faith and my belief as calling myself a Christian at that point.
That's what's up. So when y'all got, I'm sorry, were you finna say something?
So I'll say, but yeah, she was there all that time. I wasn't. I just got there. So from 17 I was saved until 19 got married, and then 19 till 25 we had that time to kind of make sure that we were on the same page. She even, again, I came from a broken home, I guess. My parents were divorced and whatever. I think this was a test of her. She said, "So do you think we'll stay married forever?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes, because it's basically it's a roll of dice, right?" That wasn't the answer she was looking for.
That's a crazy answer, Rich.
Yeah,
We'll see
I
how it
didn't know.
goes.
Yeah, because that was my perspective. I thought some people get married and it works, some people don't. Because
Oh yeah.
I saw people doing that. I had
Yeah.
What's interesting is of the four girls in my family, that's my sisters, they've all been married and divorced. But the three boys all married their high school sweethearts and are still this whole time.
Wow.
So we saw everything, and I didn't realize, though, until, again, during this process, I learned I had choices to make. I could choose to say this marriage is forever, regardless of what's going to happen, and I could choose to say I'm going to be obedient to the call in my life where God directs me, the Holy Spirit instructs me, and I can choose to love my kids and choose to accept whatever weird stuff happens along the way, knowing that that's what God wants me to do.
Wow. So kind of talk to me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You had
But
another thought?
that wasn't something that came natural to me. That was something that we learned. We were blessed to have that period of time between, and I know not everybody is. Sometimes, like, I got married and I was already a dad, and
Yeah.
hats off to people who do that. It just as much as I say for people who are single parents, having to be a dad without having a partner, I can't really imagine. I can't at all.
Yeah,
But
I can't imagine that either. So let's take me to, okay, so now all three of them are in the house.
mhm,
Okay, they're so when the oldest is about 6, 7, the oldest is 7. Now y'all have a
mhm,
newborn,
mhm.
right? So kind of talk to me about like what happens to you as an individual having 3 under 7 being a dad. Because I had that, I think I had something similar. So I want to hear what your story is.
Yeah, we talked about what we thought was the ideal separation, as if we controlled anything. We can respond to things, but we don't control a whole lot. But
Yeah.
we thought about, should we put them closer together where they fight a whole lot? Do we separate them a little bit so they don't
No,
have
what
that?
about that? That's interesting. Okay.
Oh, they don't. Doesn't matter where they are. They fight. Siblings fight.
Oh,
I think that's part of the reason that God creates the family structure, so you learn how to fight in an environment that it's not supposed to break, right? So you can
okay.
learn social skills in a world that people aren't just going to turn their back on you. Although
Mm,
sometimes that does happen, but so we really intended to try to get our kids spaced out just right. And so as a 7-year-old, our daughter was very helpful with her little brothers. She wanted to be very supportive in their life. I don't
yeah.
think they were as receptive as that as she wished they would. She would like to have been more. Um, but for me as a dad, I felt like, okay, this is great. This is God what wants us to do. We didn't have 2 in diapers at a time. We didn't have 2 going through all the terrible twos, all those kind of stuff. So it was easier for us because we started early as far as getting married, and then we had kids at 25. And a lot of times, people, especially nowadays, people are starting to have kids at 30 or more. But then you've got to compact it all. If you're going to have several, they're going to be really close, and we're doing all that same stuff. So it was easier on us not to have to deal with that. But going back to earlier, where you talked about being that first year of being a parent, I was in school at that time. So I was staying up late doing homework, and Terry was getting up early to go to work. And so our schedules overlapped pretty good, so that I could stay up and do the late night feedings, and she can get up early and do the early morning feedings. And so it worked out pretty well for us to team that way. And I tried, as much as I could, as much as guys do in general, to be a good husband at home and not feel like all of that was her responsibility.
Yeah.
But the hard thing was that Terry is a year and a half older than me, so she started in the
Hold on, real
work.
quick. I'm a what? Well, that's one of my youngest. Not as we're talking. So she's knocking on the door with a rod. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying that my wife started working before I did, so she always made more money than me, no matter what. She'd spent more time in the business world. So when we had kids and she decided she's going to stay home, that cut our income in half. So that was kind of a big thing. Wow. I knew I needed to work even harder to kind of bring home income, but I didn't want her to feel like, okay, you're home, that's all you, and I don't want anything to do with it. In fact, I said before I was in school, I got my bachelor's degree. And I decided, 2 more years, I can get my master's. And she's like, we got these 3 little kids at home. This only going to happen right now. You can either enjoy this, or you can go do your master's and come back when you've missed a couple of years of their lives. And I didn't want to do that. I still haven't ever gone back to get my master's. I'd like to do that someday, but because I enjoyed school, but I didn't want to miss that time with their kids. So I tried to be there for all of the stuff, the soccer games and the school spelling bees and just to try to get engaged.
Why did you want to do that? Like, what did you? Because I just had this conversation with my own kids about, like, I do not like missing stuff.
Like. Well, I think that comes from, again, going back to being the youngest boy, and I felt like my parents were kind of over that whole parenting thing by the time we came along. My dad was in the Navy. We had 7 kids. I think he was gone a long time. He came back. My parents said, yeah, we'll have another kid. And then he was gone for a long time and he'd come back and then, I have another kid. And my mom had said before, if she could, she'd had 14 kids. She loved having kids. She wanted kids, but 7 was still a lot. But again, the problem was by the time that I came around, my dad didn't come to my stuff. If I grew up playing basketball. I grew tall quick. So I was always the tallest person in my class, at least until I got into high school, tallest, and I could run faster because I had my body faster than everybody else. And so I was involved with sports, track, football, everything. I don't remember ever that my dad or my mom showed up to any of that kind of stuff. And so I think that impacted me too. I wanted to be there for them because I knew it was a significant thing. I don't really, fault them for it because I know that they had stuff going on. I never felt like rejected or turned down, but I did miss it, because I saw the other kids had their whole families and stuff. And so I wanted to always be there and see what my kids were doing. And for me, it was kind of an adventure anyway. I was kind of exciting to see how these kids were going to turn out. What were they going to be interested in? Because I just saw so much potential. We did, Terry and I together decided at least 1 year of music. All of our kids have to have at least 1 year of music. Because you hear that that affects both logical and creative sides of your brain. Yeah, so we had them do piano lessons for a year. And the boys were like, great, we did it for a year, we're done. And I don't think they've ever done anything else musically. But Rachel, she did after that. She did clarinet for a while. And then she did some percussion stuff at the high school. So she stuck with it a little bit more. But it was one of those things where we thought, okay, let's see. Then maybe they'll have that inclination to do that. If not, great. All right, then we'll put them in t-ball. Then we'll put them in soccer. Then they'll wrestle. Then they'll play football. Lacrosse. We tried all different kind of stuff to see what your kids enjoyed and what they what stuck with, and encourage them in that area.
That's a really good point that you just made. Like, some of us parents want to decide exactly at that point what the kid is going to do, which is really somewhat unfair. To a degree. Matter of fact, I was talking to a dad yesterday. We was at a softball game, and his son loves softball. But dad says, I'm not going to push him to be that. I just want, if that's what he wants, that's what we're going to do. And the son is like 8 and already wants to be a professional baseball player. Dad is like, I'm going to encourage them to do that. But I'm not going to push them until they get to like 12, 13, where you kind of have an idea. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, about 12, that they have an idea where they have about 5 more years to kind of nurture that gift a little bit while they're under the nest, if you will.
Yeah.
And then be ready. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. In fact, I don't know if I've told you, I've been doing a martial arts program at our church since 1998. We do a Taekwondo class, and so I see a lot of young kids coming in it, and we kind of do as kind of a community outreach for the church. It's very low commitment, inexpensive. We only meet 3 times a week, Monday night, Thursday night, and Saturday morning. But I do see that point where kids hit that 12 or 13-year-old, either they're like, we're going to lose them. The chances are, because now they're exposed to so many other things.
Okay.
They came in here usually because their parents felt like they didn't feel comfortable with organized sports, or maybe the child didn't work well with as a part of a team. And this was something they could do individually, but as a group together. But there's something about hitting that 12 or 13-year-old where they decide, okay, now I really need to focus on what I really want to do from here out. And their choices get to be a lot bigger. And certainly by the time they're 16, when they get a driver's license, they're kind of on their own as far as deciding what they want to do at that point, because they're going to be where they want to be. They have that mobility. So certainly, and with Stephen, he was the one I did soccer with. When he was 5, I did the base soccer. I was his coach, and I coached his whole little team for 5 years. And when they hit really about 10 years old, even the ones who wanted to keep on doing it really needed more than me. I was never a soccer player. They needed some college kid to come in here and really show them how to take this to that select level. So even as early as 10, I noticed some of those kids wanting to commit to something and spend a little bit more time at it than I was able to give as a non-skilled.
Even though you played sports, that wasn't the skill.
Yeah, that wasn't one of those that was on my list growing up. Not that it couldn't have been. It just wasn't popular enough, and it required a lot of running. I was not a runner. When I was on the track team, I was like high jumping and long jumping, but I had short sprints that I could run, and then I'm done.
That's funny. So as a dad, as you move them out to because they're 7. They're about 7 years apart in totality, if you will. So, how would you kind of educate the parent that has them all around the age of like middle school, high school, college? Like, what is some advice that you would give to people in that age?
Well, one of the things that we did was in our church, we decided when our kids were young, we were going to work in the nursery just the age right ahead of our kids. So we had an idea what to expect, and that was good for us as far as parenting. And so we always kind of knew what was going on. And then once they were in high school, we just kind of stayed there, because as our kids kind of eventually all funneled through, we saw them come to high school. And one of the things I noticed was that I think it's your junior year when you take the early SATs, pre-SATs, what they call it. That's one that really made a big difference for a lot of you. You can actually get scholarships off this early thing. So I thought, well, by the time you're in high school, freshman, and definitely by sophomore, you really got to start thinking those several years ahead. Whereas up to that point, it can change a whole lot. That's when we were trying to expose our kids to many different things during the middle school, junior high. But by the time they get into freshman, sophomore year, they really need to start focusing those next 3 years on what they might want to do if it was college. And we wanted to make sure college was an option for all of our kids. Okay. I've asked my kids before if they thought their college time was worthwhile, and it's still an iffy thing. They're not sure. Wow. They're not necessarily working in their degree. Rachel started school at Oklahoma Baptist in Shawnee. She wanted to be a nurse. And then they said, "Here's a cadaver." And she said, "Bye." I think I want to get into business. Or she ended up graduating from UTA with a teaching degree, and she taught for a while. And she kind of still works with kids, so she loves that. I think it did work for her. Brent, from the very early on, he was one of those kids who was gathering all the neighborhoods, get together, and like, let's do a play, or let's do a skit, or let's do a music video or something. He was very directorial. And so he ended up going to UNT, to the radio, TV, film school, and learning about that. So ended up moving out to California and kind of doing that. But yeah, I said.
So he went from Texas to California.
Yeah,
that is funny. Go ahead.
That's right.
That is funny.
And he's not far from where my family is. He can actually see them once in a while, but. And he's one of those we thought, okay, we've lost him. He's gone out in California, and we talked to my family. You guys got to keep an eye on him, make sure he stays straight. And then he met a girl out there and fall in love with the church, just like I came to Texas, met a girl, fall in love with the church. Yeah. So it just goes to show you, it's not where you are. God's everywhere. God's got a plan.
That is crazy.
And he's not even really focusing mostly on the radio, TV, film stuff anymore. He's trying to be a teacher now. He's been working as a warehouse manager, but I think he's focusing on, he wants to be a teacher. So I don't know if the education necessarily applied. Obviously, you need to be educated and degree to be a teacher, but and certainly Stephen, when he went to school, he really wanted to be an evangelist or a minister. He wanted to go on mission out in the mission field, and he went to A&M, but he set his degree up to be like, world business. He wanted to learn more about the world so he could go out there and do things. And then once he graduated from college, got married, and now he's in insurance. I don't think it necessarily fit at all into what he wanted to do. So it's definitely one of those where you want your kids to have every opportunity, but knowing full well, we don't know where things are going to turn. You just don't know how things are going to work out.
So how do you parent them now?
Well, I don't remember the name of the guy who talked about the 4 C's. When
Pastor John has.
Yeah, I think he's mentioned that before, where you're the commander when they're little, and then you're the coach, and then you're the consultant.
Consultant.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we are now. We're at that stage where we're a consultant. We're brought in as needed, but we kind of try to stay out of the picture as much as we can. We've cut most of the ties as far as they're all on their own insurance, they're all on their own phone plan. They all have their own house payments or apartment. And they're all married now. So it's definitely a different world. But we definitely are, at least the 2 that have kids, we try as much as possible to be involved in their kids' lives, so we can love on them and be encouraging. But more than anything else, we just try to support them as parents. It's never about telling them what's right and what's wrong, because just like my kids were different than my parents' kids and so on. Their kids are being raised differently, because you mentioned earlier about how when you get together, you bring 2 different things to the picture, where your faith goes. The same thing goes with your parenting skills.
Good point.
My wife has had her background and I had mine, and now we're parenting based on that. And our kids had our background, but now they've got their spouses that come in. And again, we've been blessed. All 3 of our kids have great spouses, and those spouses have great families that we're all very impressed with. We don't have any conflicts or any kind of we don't talk about this, or we don't go there, or whatever. It's all been really good. So
that's incredible.
I'm just as excited to see how my grandkids are going to turn out as I was to see how my kids were going to turn out.
Wow. So that's dope. I think I commend you on something like that. You would like to think that you had some role in the fact of them searching and finding a spouse that is conducive to their faith and their upbringings, right? So I love hearing something like that.
I don't know. I guess you probably know Clay Bernard, my wife, my daughter Rachel, her husband Clay. He is a lot like me. He's a tall guy. He loves IT. We have a lot in common. So I do sometimes think that I was influential to my daughter. She ended up finding someone very similar. My boys they didn't marry anybody at all like my wife, though. They both, because they both were like branching out. They were going to be just open to what God had in store for them. So I think that we've got a whole lot of new flavor, a lot of new background into our world as it continues to grow out. I'm excited about that.
That's what's up. Like, I want to get into these last few questions, and you have been, most gracious in your time, and I appreciate that. And the questions that you've answered has been very enlightening to me, because my kids are 11 and under, right? And so I'm also, I always try to think forward, thinking like what are they going to be like when it's time to go off into college, and like how am I going to be responding to them as they get into the real world, So this has been very helpful as far as especially remembering what Pastor says about that consulting phase, because I think one of the hard things for a parent to do is to let go of being, the coach and the cop, and as the kid leaves. So I appreciate that for a reminder. So I wanted to get into these fun facts, not fun facts, but these fun questions. So
okay.
I have 45 questions. You have to give me a number between 1 and 45. I'll read the question, and then you'll answer it to the best of your ability. So here we go. Give me
Let's
the
start
number.
with number one. I always like to see where you started with. We'll go
Okay.
with number one.
All right, cool. Go with number one. All right. Tell me about the day that your last child was born.
Stephen was our last child. Was born in '93, and it was again like other ones. It was one of those. It was a scheduled event, and fortunately for us, I think all of our uh, children pregnancies processes tended to get a little bit easier. And I don't know if it was just the fact that we got more used to it. We had more perspective. That
Yeah.
first time is a panic because you just know what happened. You can be doing everything like you're supposed to be doing and you don't know. We went yesterday before we were scheduled to meet. We actually went to a friend's house to drop off a meal, and we were trying to be as encouraging to them because you could just see it in their eyes. Are we doing the right thing? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we? There's just so many unknowns that first time through, and for your last one, you feel like, yeah, this is truly a blessing that God is allowing us to do this, and we're so glad to have him. And he was kind of our fun kid. The first one you try to do all the right things. And the second child, he didn't know he was going to be a middle child, but the second one was always, you always felt like there was a comparison there. But they were in the boy and the girl, so they're kind of almost like two first children. And then that third one, he was always smiling, always laughing, always fun. Didn't have a whole lot of problems through his delivery or birth or pregnancy. And I just think it was kind of a nice bow on our parenting, that process kind of wrapping. This was going to be the end part of it. So I think that, again, I always felt like I was trusting God to direct all these things. And I felt like God came through with Stephen.
That's what's up.
All of our kids are great and we're happy with them, but yeah.
For sure. All the kids are great.
Yeah.
You only telling me about the day that he was particular.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you don't want to make nobody jealous, right?
Yeah.
All right, give me another number.
All right, let's go to the other end. Let's go 45. What was the last one you came up with?
Okay. What's the funniest thing you did but blame someone else for?
The funniest thing I did?
But you blame someone else for.
See, that's the thing. I like being funny. I don't know that I blame somebody else for being funny. I would take the credit. That's a tough one to kind of come up. It's like asking someone to tell you a joke. I can't think of a joke.
Yes. So tell me something about a funny moment. Well, tell me a funny moment that you remember somewhere in between either from your kids' time when they were, as kids, or you as a kid.
Well, again, a lot of my kids' stories are stories that were told by my older siblings, but I feel like I remember this. But being the youngest boy, I kind of did what my older siblings did. And I remember getting in trouble once, me and my brother. I think it was probably fighting. We did that a lot, fought in the car. But, when you cram 7 kids into a car, you're going to have some conflict. And so it was one of those deals where, mom says, all right, when dad comes home, you're going to get it. So we headed for the bedroom and put on every single pair of underwear we owned. I mean, I think we're each wearing 6, 8, 10 pair of underwear. And we had these bubble butts walking out there like, bring it on, And I don't remember this, but I remember that part about doing all this stuff. I remember being conscious about, layers of protection. But my family says my dad kind of busted out laughing. It was hard for him to spank us because he saw the humor in what we were doing. I'm pretty sure we still got it, but
that's funny, man. I honestly thought that was only in TV. I thought that was like somebody do it TV.
Yeah,
that's what's up. Thanks.
But it's a kind of the dumb stuff you do when you're young that you see your kids doing. Think, okay, we can give them a break on that because we try to pull stuff too,
Yes, absolutely. Last question. What's your last number?
Let's do 22. That was both my wife and I's birthdays on 22, and we had hoped to get married on the 22nd. And then our pastor at that time, his wife got married, and she picked the 22 and bumped us out. So 22 is a good number for us.
For sure. Okay. What is the best thing you have found about being a parent? What is the best thing you have found about being a parent?
What I really think that, and I recommend for everybody to be a parent is the fact that life goes on. There's more to it than just me. For so much of our perspective is I'm normal because that's all I had to compare it with. And then I realized that even kids that came from me were raised in the house that I live in are all going to be unique. And that I've enjoyed the fact that all three of my kids are different and all of them are great and all of them have been complete pains, but and I love them for all of it. And I think it's made me a better person, a better husband, a better friend, because I've learned how to be responsible, at least for a while, for somebody else. When we move out of our parents' house, we have to grow up to a degree. And when we get married and commit to someone else, we have to take on another level of responsibility because we got someone. But there's nothing like saying, this person, if you're not there, they're not going to survive. I've got to do the right thing. So it's something about that level of maturity, that stepping up and then receiving that blessing upon blessing after that to see them grow, that makes being a parent worthwhile.
That is dope.
And then grandparenting, even better, we get to have all the fun and then send them back home. So
wow, so you get to basically reap the fruit, if you will.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
What's up. That's what's up. Well, I really appreciate that. Okay, so we got last two questions, and the second to last question is: which TV dad would you say you resemble the most as it relates to your parenting style or your persona?
Well, I was pretty. I worked a lot when my kids were young. I spent 30 years in the IT world before I got into fitness. But I thought myself as, and you may not remember this, Father Knows Best. This is an old black and white show. Okay, he was kind of that dad who wasn't home all the time, knew what was going on with everything, and again tried to be involved with stuff. But a lot of my relationship came after coming home from work. What's going on? Tell me about your story, bud. Tell me about your story. And just kind of getting involved with my kids' life and trying to be kind of that, offer some good advice to them. I wanted to be straight with them. I wanted to be fun with them, but I wasn't like, again, this is me growing up. I watched Courtship of Eddie's Father, where it was the dad who was your best friend.
I've never heard of that show. What's that?
The Courtship of Eddie's Father.
Okay, never heard.
It was based on a movie, but the show was around a guy who lost his wife. He had a kid, and so he was a single dad, and his son was 6-8 years old and was constantly trying to get him to find a new wife. So it was the Courtship of Eddie's Father, trying to get. It was kind of a cute little show, but it was just the two of them because that's all they had, and they were very, very close. And as much as I enjoyed being close with my kids, it wasn't that same kind of thing. I still felt like they've only got one dad, and I need to be the dad. I don't want to take their place as their best friend or feel jealous of their friends any more than I want to take the place of my wife's girlfriends. She has a great relationship with these girls, and I can't fill that role. But I can be her husband better than anybody else can, and I can be these kids' dads better than anybody else. So I wanted to make sure that I was there for that stuff.
That is dope, man. That was a really good answer. That's a really good answer. And the last question is, how would you like for your kids to remember you? What would you like for them to say about you?
I think that kids' perspective of the parents sometimes is skewed when they grow up. And as you become a parent yourself, you look back on your parents as differently. So I would like my kids to remember how I was with their kids, right? Because again, I'm not sure they're going to think of me as a parent as the way that maybe I intended to be, because they have different perspective. But they're going to see me. I want them to see me with their kids, and I want them to see me. I'm a good grandfather, and because of that, they can believe that I also was a good dad, even though we might have fought about stuff. Your kids complain about, I never get fun, or I never get that. Everybody else can do that, because it's a constant struggle there between what they want to do and what you want them to do, and that sometimes can be harsh. And you can look back and say, my dad was a hard person. I don't want them to necessarily be that. I want them to see me play with their kids and say, my dad loves my kids. My dad loved me. My dad is, he provides for my grandkids or my kids, because my dad provided for me. So I'm trying to be not necessarily to make up for what I didn't do, because I believe that the Holy Spirit guided whatever I did, even the stupid stuff I did. I believe that God allowed me to do that for a reason. And I made a lot of mistakes from my own perspective, but I want them to remember the good stuff and the caring stuff, the stuff that I thought like was intentional and was there for a purpose, was a reason. I wanted to be there for my kids when they did stuff, because I wanted to know that I encouraged them along the way, and I want to be there for their grandkids just as much, so that my kids can be encouraged, seeing that again a second time.
That's what's up. Well, I really appreciate it. Hope people, like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you thought about, Richard's take on being a granddad and a dad, which is
great ride.
Hope to be able to become one day. And so as we go out and we close out, what can you kind of tell us a little bit about, like, what you're currently doing, as far as like with your business and things of that nature?
Yeah, I switched from the IT world in 2017. I'd worked for small companies and then bigger and bigger and bigger, and got bought and sold and laid off and whatever. And I kind of got tired of being a small cog in a big machine, feeling like I wasn't sure I was making any impact on anybody. I think I have the gift of service. My desire is to go help people. And I love that in the computer world, because I enjoyed computers. And if people couldn't do the job because of their computer, I really enjoyed fixing it for them. Say, oh, yeah, here, this working again. Now you can go back and do your thing. And when that quit being something I could do, because now I'm working on a team, late at night, sending out files, and who knows if this is helping anybody. That's when the kind of fitness world evolved. I'd been doing this martial arts things for a long time and doing a boot camp thing for a long time. I thought, well, maybe I'll just be a full-time fitness person. So opened up my own gym in 2018, and with my goal of just trying to be a trainer, trying to impact as many people as I could. And since COVID came and we started doing online, I think that's really even expanded even more. I can now minister to people that are not local in the DFW area, but California and Florida and Texas and Chicago and all over. I'm able to be a health coach, which is kind of the way I think of myself now, not as a personal trainer, but as someone who can try to help people come up with what are some areas in your life that are obstacles that are keeping you from being healthy. And it may just be the way I think about food. It may be the way I think about my own ability, my positivity, and can I do this? Because it's hard for people to overcome their lack of confidence. So if I can build up some self-confidence in themselves, then that kind of opens up doors to you of possibilities. So being a health coach is hopefully something I can do the rest of my life. Even if I can't physically train, I don't still have the strength or stamina to do stuff. I can encourage people to say, hey, make good choices in your life. Get the sleep you need, get that hydration you need. Think about all the good things that are going to come from you taking care of yourself. And maybe that's just me getting older and wanting to fight it all the way,
So how can people reach out to you if they wanted to?
My gym is called Breakthrough Fitness, and I have a website called breakthroughfitnessbedford.com. I also have a Facebook page, breakthroughfitnessbedford.com, and that's where most of my information is. There's a schedule that I've got going on. There's a phone number on there. You can reach me there, email. So just check that out. And if anybody really, I think if I was to say my biggest group geographic of the people I'd like to help are people I think that have tried to lose weight before and have hit a roadblock. They're stuck, and they feel like I'm ready I can't do it anymore. I want to come in here and say, yes, you can. Don't give up. You can do this. Because for a lot of people, they've been on that roller coaster and they're okay with that. I lost some weight. Great. I went to whatever event and then I gained it back and I lost it. But people are like, it's now or never. I'm drawing the line in the sand. I'm ready to be the healthy person I've always wanted to be. That's what I want to do, because I want to make a lifestyle change for people, not just give them a pill, lose some weight, and then not change your habits and gain it all back again.
I heard the passion, man. I really appreciate the time. It's been fun talking to you, and see you in a moment, man.
All right, thanks for letting me do this.
Absolutely. Yeah.